ביבי נתניהו שלום, אנחנו נמצאים בשבי החמאס 23 ימים. אתמול הייתה מסיבת עיתונאים עם משפחות החטופים. אנחנו יודעים שהייתה אמורה להיות הפסקת אש, היית אמור לשחרר את כולנו, התחייבת לשחרר את כולנו, ובמקום זה אנחנו נושאים במחדל הפוליטי, ביטחוני, צבאי, מדיני שלך, בגלל הפשלה הזאת שעשית ב7 לאוקטובר, בגלל שלא היה צבא שם, אף אחד לא הגיע, אף אחד לא שמר עלינו, ואנחנו אזרחים תמימים, אזרחים שמשלמים מיסים למדינת ישראל, נמצאים בשבי, בתנאים לא תנאים. אתה הורג אותנו, אתה תהרוג, אתה רוצה להרוג את כולנו, אתה רוצה עם צה"ל להרוג את כולנו, לא מספיק טבחת בכולם, לא מספיק אזרחים ישראלים נהרגו, שחרר אותנו עכשיו, שחרר את האזרחים שלהם, שחרר את האסירים שלהם, שחרר אותנו, שחרר את כולנו, תן לנו לחזור למשפחות שלנו עכשיו!
Basically telling the Israeli government the blood is on their hands. It's quite clear in posters like this down here, those handprints, and it's also clear in the posters that you see. The anger here is that not enough is being done about the hostages, that Israel seems to be willing to fight in Gaza but not bring these people home, and basically to a person here we've been told that everybody is willing to give up the 11,000 Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel in exchange for the 150 or so, and that includes the Americans, of course. The basic idea is the tension is so high here that people are blaming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for getting into this mess, for thinking about his own political situation for the past number of years, and not about protecting the citizens of the south of this country, not about increasing security, and not thinking about dealing with Hamas in any other way than just allowing them to exist and then, bombing them every once in a while. That there has been no strategic plan. It's been keeping a status quo that is untenable. That's what these people have been complaining about here. So it's broad and it's also long-lasting. These are complaints that have been going on for years here in Israel, Phil.
What makes this different than past conflicts? Obviously, this is called a war, but...
No, there is nothing in comparison. Bibi is a murderer. That's what the people behind me are chanting. Bibi is a murderer. First of all, that's a big difference. Second is, Juan, let's get back on the sidewalk. The second is that in terms of scale, of shock, of exploding a sense of hubris in Israel, there's nothing ever like this in the history of Israel, right? And this is where traditionally a lot protests against Netanyahu have been happening over the past year or so. Hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands every single Saturday. And I just want to show you the extent of the anger here. These people are alive, by the way. Everybody's fine. They are play acting, and it says, Bibi, resign. And obviously that's meant to signify blood on the ground, an Israeli flag, roses. And these signs say, keep going, Bibi, over our dead bodies.
It is October 30th, and this is your daily update on what's going on in Palestine. Yesterday, Palestinian fighters offered the Israeli military a hostage exchange. For those of you who don't know, the Israeli military has over 5,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons, and in the past 2 weeks, that number has doubled to 10,000. These Palestinians are often taken randomly off of mere speculation and held in Israeli prisons with no due process for weeks, even years. Some of these prisoners include literal children who are interrogated without their parents. It's also important to mention that when these Palestinians do see their day in court, it's under a military court system instead of a civil one, since they are not Israeli citizens. And under these military courts, there's a 95+ conviction rate, meaning 95+% chance that you will be going to jail. The deal was, in exchange for the 250 hostages inside Gaza, Israel would release some of the 10,000 Palestinian prisoners they had in West Bank, and of course the Israeli military declined. The family of the hostages and many Israelis took to the streets of Tel Aviv the other day, demanding that the government take this deal. After that, this video was released out of Gaza with 3 of the prisoners, and let me just say they were livid at the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's take a look.
מסיבת עיתונאים עם משפחות החטופים. אנחנו יודעים שהייתה אמורה להיות הפסקת אש, היית אמור לשחרר את כולנו, התחייבת לשחרר את כולנו, ובמקום זה אנחנו נושאים במחדל הפוליטי, ביטחוני, צבאי, מדיני שלך, בגלל הפאשה הזאת שעשית ב7 לאוקטובר.
I'm gonna go out on a whim here and say Israel does not want these hostages freed, and we have seen this evidence over and over. Number one is the indiscriminate bombing of the Gaza Strip that has already taken the lives of multiple Israeli hostages already. If they cared about these hostages, they would not be carpet bombing the entire strip. Number two, every time one of these hostages is freed, they do not play into the narrative that the Israeli government wants to spread about the people living in Gaza. They always end up saying that they were treated well and that this whole thing is the government's fault. And number three, the Israeli military clearly wants to use these people's unalivings as a reason to continue their genocidal campaign on the Gaza Strip. And this is exactly how they used the October 7th attack to justify the genocide as well. But then a lot of Israeli survivors from that day started coming out and saying that a lot of Israelis got unalived by their own military in the heavy crossfire. So something to think about.
Today, Hamas released a video of 3 prisoners, and while we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, it's pretty clear that the video emphasizes Netanyahu's role in their own plight. As the majority of hostages are still being held, and the genocide in Gaza continues, more and more journalists are scrutinizing Israel about their role in the October 7th attack. For instance, reports are swirling about the Be'eri kibbutz, with some journalists going back to the accounts of those early days. Like when ABC News photographed artillery pieces resembling Israeli munitions outside a bombed-out home. According to Haaretz, the army was only able to restore control over Be'eri after admittedly shelling the homes of Israelis who had been taken captive. According to a kibbutz resident, IDF commanders in the field made difficult decisions that included shelling houses with all of the occupants inside in order to eliminate terrorists alongside the hostages. Only after doing that did the IDF completely take over the kibbutz, and the price was terrible. At least 112 Be'eri people were killed, and that 11 days after the massacre, the bodies of a mother and her child were discovered in one of the destroyed houses. It's believed that more bodies are still lying under the rubble. A video posted by the Telegram account of Israel's South Responders shows bodies of Israelis discovered under the rubble of a home destroyed by a powerful explosive blast, and it's likely a tank shell. As a reporter for the Israeli Foreign Ministry-sponsored outlet I-24 noted during a visit to Be'eri, quote,
small and quaint homes bombarded or destroyed, well-maintained lawns of grass ripped up by the tracks of an armored vehicle, perhaps a tank.
But not only Israeli tanks and shelling were involved. Apache helicopters were involved too. In an Israeli media outlet called Mako, an Apache pilot says that many of the cars he fired rockets at contained hostages and that Israeli forces opened fire on rave-goers themselves because it was hard to tell who was who. Pilots have told Israeli media that they scrambled to the battlefield without any intelligence, unable to differentiate between Hamas fighters and Israeli non-combatants. One pilot says that he found himself in a dilemma as to what to shoot at. A report on the Apache squadrons by one Israeli outlet says, quote, the rate of fire against the thousands of terrorists was tremendous, and only at a certain point did the pilots begin to slow down the attacks and carefully select the targets. A squadron commander explained how he nearly attacked the home of an Israeli family occupied by Hamas militants and wound up firing next to it with a cannon. He said, quote, our forces hadn't had time to reach the settlement yet, and I've already run out of missiles there, which is the more accurate weaponry. With the family inside of a fortified bomb shelter, the pilot, quote, decided to shoot a cannon 30 meters from this house, a very difficult decision. I'm also telling you the truth. It crossed my mind that I was shooting at a house. Among the most gruesome videos of the aftermath of October 7th, also published on the Telegram account of South Responders, shows a car full of charred corpses at the entrance of Kibbutz Be'eri. The Israeli government portrayed these casualties as Israeli victims of sadistic Hamas violence. But one journalist, who's controversial and well-known, named Max Blumenthal, puts that into question. He says the melted steel body and collapsed roof of the car, and the comprehensively scorched corpses inside, evidence a direct hit from a Hellfire missile. As the genocide in Gaza continues, not only is there mounting evidence that Israel's response to the October 7th attack was inadequate, many people are wondering if the barbarism of October 7th can be linked, at least in some instances, to the IDF themselves.